Hey, hello everyone. How you doing? I'll be with you shortly. Of course, happy 4th of July for you folks celebrating in the U.S. or if you're in the U.S. or wherever you might be. If you are a U.S. citizen in the world, happy 4th of July. Be with you guys shortly. And if you can, just let me know how the audio's coming in, if it's loud enough for you guys. And I'll be with you in a bit. Thanks for being here. Seymour Rivers. Yes, you do have a lot of reading to do. And I wonder why. Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira, and happy 4th of July. Glad you could be here. Glad you're taking time to celebrate with us. I hope you've had a good celebration this weekend with family and friends. And again, for our U.S. viewers, U.S. citizens, happy 4th. Quick roll call. See who we have out here joining us today. Mutant Ref, how you doing? Jay, just plain old Jay. How you doing, Jay? How you doing? BK Travelog, how you doing? Love having you here on Sunday nights as well. Thank you for that. Uh, Good point right off the bat. Big government, no big government equals freedom. And we're going to be taking a look at what some people have said about that, whether they be founding fathers or even people such as Ron Paul. So we'll take a look at that. Great comment. Great comment. Seymour Rivers, yes, a lot of reading as mentioned. Let's see who else is out there. Ace is up. Ace is up. How you doing? Happy 4th. Let's see. Absolutely happy 4th to all our brothers and sisters. Silver, gold, brothers, sisters, well, however it can be defined. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all together in this, all together. Patrick Bateman, greetings and salutations. How you doing, Patrick? Let's see, Carrie Ellen Welder, how you doing? Good morning. Hugs to all. Hugs to all. Yes. Mr. Narong Somchit, how you doing? Good morning. I know I messed your name up, but good morning. Good morning. Just the same. Harold B. Tilek Me, how you doing? Good morning from Thailand. First time I think I've seen you here. Welcome aboard. If you are new or if it's your first time here, go ahead and type in new and where you're from, and we'll see if we can acknowledge you. So, Tilak, 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 how you doing? And good morning if you're over in Thailand. Jack P, how you doing? Jeff Smith, Xavier J. Yes, happy 4th. Yes, we are in Singapore, and sometimes some guys didn't know we were in Singapore, but yeah, we're actually over out in Singapore. So yeah, I appreciate that. Happy 4th. Let's see. And absolutely, as my colleague Vincent, he is here. And happy 4th to the viewers in the U.S. coming from Vincent as well. Mitch Alex, Yo Yo Juarez, how you doing from SoCal? Thanks for joining us. I think it's still pretty early in the evening there, so I'm sure with tomorrow off, your party is just getting started as well. So how you doing, Mr. Olmer? How you doing? 1 year. Thank you for being here for 1 year. Mr. Bias, how you doing? Holger, how you doing, sir? Happy. Hi, everyone. He says yes, indeed. Annette Walls, Middle Tennessee here. How you doing, Annette? Xavier J, Miami, Pablo Pina, how you doing, brother? It's been a while. Aloha, aloha to you. Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. As always, if you're new or if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe, hit the bell to be notified on updates, and give us a thumbs up. They really do mean a lot to us, and we really do appreciate them. You can always find us on social media. Well, half of us anyway, now the whole of us. You can find us at silverbullion.com.sg. That is our website. Yes, we do sell gold and silver. We do store gold and silver, platinum, palladium, even nickel, things like that. But more than anything, we do specialize in wealth protection. And as I always say, if you do know what's going on out there, or if you have a feeling of what's going on out there, go ahead and shoot us an email, sales at silverbullion.com.sg. Talk to us, and we'll see what we can do for you if we have a solution for your concerns. Silver Bullion SG is where you can find us on Facebook. Silver Bullion PL is our handle on Twitter, PL for private limited. Silver Bullion SG is where you can find us on Instagram. It's a new social media platform we're starting to use. Not new, but new for us. Audio versions bit.ly, SBTV iTunes, or SBTV Spotify, and of course, Crisis Tracker. If you want to know what's going on, do join that Crisis Tracker group. If you have Telegram, whether for your desktop or for your mobile phone, tablet, whatever it is, go ahead, type in Crisis Tracker. You'll find us there, or search Crisis Tracker. You'll find us there, and just join the group. It is growing, and I think we've been pretty active with the help of Stephen T. He's been adding in quite a bit more news articles. So, Stephen, thank you for that, and hope you folks find it useful. So, again, aloha, welcome to our program. Glad you are here. Who else is going to be here? Our upcoming guest is going to be a guy who's been making the rounds, very popular, Ted Oakley. He's the founder of Oxbow Advisors and co-founder of its predecessor firm, HPO Advisors. And he's going to join us as a first-time guest. He has over 35 years of experience in the investment industry. And he has something that they call the Oxbow Principles, which we'll ask him about. Uh, the firm's proprietary investment strategies were developed as a result of the unique perspective Ted gained throughout his almost 4 decade tenure advising high net worth investors. So I'm sure Ted's going to have a lot to say. A very well journeyed, experienced man when it comes to the markets and what's going on. So looking forward to having Ted. And we'll skip on over to our ebook. Thank you giveaway. Well, it's a giveaway if you can get the answer right. The book this week, Liberty Defined by Dr. Ron Paul. Liberty Defined. The term liberty is so commonly used in our country that it has become a mere cliche. But do we know what it means, what it promises, and how it factors into our daily lives? And most importantly, can we recognize tyranny when it is sold to us disguised as as a form of liberty? So I think that's going to be a pretty good book. If you want to get it, here's the house rules. Download that Kindle app from your phone or tablet's app store. You guys know the rules. You hear week in and week out. So get that app. It's free. And be one of the first 5 to answer correctly in the live stream before the timer runs out. Okay, before the timer runs out, you're going to have about a minute and 30, I believe. US winners, you're going to be given a link to download that ebook. Non-US winners, you'll still win, but you may have to ask Amazon to give you an alternative price or exchange the ebook for something else like a gift card. And that being because uh, Kindle or they don't gift ebooks outside of the US. So that's the reason why. And you'll have to provide us an email during this live stream. And when you do, please do not put any other messages in that email. So what will happen is Vincent will mute your comments and then you can go ahead and send your email and that way nobody will see it except for us. So Vincent is here. He's always here. I like that guy. I like him a lot. Anyway, so let's move forward to our question, and it does come from last week's JP Cortez interview, which Stephen had with JP, and I hope you guys have a chance to watch it because JP is definitely in line with what a lot of us believe. So do take some time to go ahead and take a look at that interview. The question: if you sell precious metals for a gain and are taxed on that gain, JP says this kind of a gain, it's a nominal gain brought on by blank. Okay, according to JP Cortez from last week's JP Cortez interview. So he did say that it's a tax. It's a nominal gain brought on by blank. So it's a one word deal. It's a word we keep hearing over and over and over right now. So that would be a little bit of a hint as to what it may be. So go ahead and just take your best shot. Okay, take your best shot. You never know, might get it right. So let's see. Um, 495, how you doing? Aloha, JR, how you doing from Melbourne, Australia? Pablo Pina again. So go ahead and take a shot. Okay, so capital gain. Okay, capital gain. Inflation. Harold B. Seymour Rivers is capital gain. Seymour Rivers now says inflation. Mr. Nguyen, deflation. Okay, what else is out there? Mitch, Mitch Alex, greed. I like that one. Gary D is saying inflation. Okay. Paul says inflation. Woodsman, capital gain, aces up, silver, right at the bell. Okay, so all right, we have our five winners. Our five winners. Good job, guys. Great job, great job. The five guys who are going to be getting the one, two, three, four. Oh, hang on. Let's see. Actually, there's four. Hang on. Let me check this. Make sure I got it all in there. Um, two. Sorry about that, guys. Hang on. Three, four. Okay. All right. Hang on. Okay. So the winners are going to be Aces up, silver. The word was inflation. Aces up, silver. Seymour Rivers, you're going to have even more to read. Inflation. Good job. Gary D. Inflation. Great job. Paul. Inflation. You got it right as well. And Harold B. also got it right. Inflation. So these are the five winners. Again, Aces up, silver. Seymour Rivers, Gary D., Paul, and Harold B. So great job for these guys. And just to prove that the word was inflation, we're going to revisit JP Morgan's interview, and this is what he had to say about it.
If you were to have purchased a bar of gold 10 years ago and sell it today for a gain, you would be taxed on that gain. However, many times that is a phantom gain. It's a nominal gain brought on by inflation. It's not that the value of your gold has gone up, but rather that the value of the dollar using to purchase that you're using to purchase the gold has decreased. And so many times this tax is unfair, especially in states that charge you tax on the purchase of the metals, and then you're charged again on the sale of the metal. It becomes double taxation. It's incredibly unfair.
Okay, did I say JP Morgan? JP Cortez. That comes from JP Cortez interview last week, which again Stephen T handled. Do take a look. Do take a look at it. So, should there be a tax on sound money? I mean, this is sound money. Why are we getting sort of like a double tax on it? And what do you think? And in the meantime, as you're kind of thinking about that, which I know your answer is probably going to be no, and it should be, I want to take a look at their website. Um, this is from moneymetals.com. Hang on, let me just get my mouse over there. The 2020 Sound Money Index, I'm sure they're going to be updating it, or maybe they have, and I missed it already. And so, what this is, all 50 states are here, and it kind of explains or it says if your state is favorable to gold and silver, or if they're not so favorable to it. So, the most favorable state for gold and silver is Wyoming, then Texas, then Utah, South Dakota, Alaska, and so on. So all 50 states are here, and they use the certain type of methodology where gold and silver coins, that state would get 8 points if there's no sales tax, 4 points for a partial sales tax, 0 points for full sales tax. So this methodology, what you wanted to see was your state having more points, and the more points they had meant the more friendly they are to silver and gold. So state sales tax rate, state income tax rate. So you can see it was broken down here, and then they went ahead and they rated each state. So again, best state or the top state is Wyoming. Very favorable. You can see they got quite a bit of points. Very favorable where there is no sales tax on gold and silver, I believe. Sales tax on platinum and palladium. They may have just a slight tax on those, I believe. And so you can see they scored very, very well. So good on Wyoming, good on Texas, Utah, South Dakota, Alaska, New Hampshire, Washington, Arizona, Florida, and Nevada, the top 10. Unfortunately, my state made the bottom 10, right there at number 40, Hawaii. So we made the bottom 10, with Vermont being the most unfriendly to gold and silver. So your state is here. So go ahead and see how your state's doing. So it's a pretty good thing to look at that JP and the guys provide with the help of money metals. So moving on, another thing that JP said. Here we go.
In order to fund the Civil War, Lincoln and the government agencies decided to print Continentals. They were called greenbacks. And this was the first, to my knowledge, American currency that hyperinflated, that they printed, the thousands, tens of thousands, millions of them, and they eventually lost all of their value. There's been a long-standing history of governments trying to create money out of nothing, this financial alchemy where they just create money and by law, by government edict, give it power, give it monetary properties. But that's not how money works. And so similarly to the way the Continental experiment failed, the US dollar, the Federal Reserve Note experiment is also doomed to fail. And we're seeing that happen today in real time.
All right, JP Cortez, the U.S. dollar. Must have had a croissant that morning when I typed this in. The U.S., excuse me for the typo, dollar is doomed to fail, is what he says. And it's what a lot of people think as well. As the U.S. moved into some form of liberty and freedom, which is what they were really trying to get, they realized that freedom was not free. And we hear this phrase all the time, freedom is not free. They realized that whether it was in lives that were given up, or in monetary sense, in a monetary sense where wars need to be funded. So they realized this. And money was needed for freedom. The only thing is, unbacked money leads to too much creation of money, and creating too much money often leads to debt. And we all know debt leads to a form of slavery. So it's kind of interesting how these things how they all work out there. And Mitch Alex, yes, Ron Paul introduced the bill every session to remove capital gains on gold. Yes, he did. And today, some of these torchbearers who are still carrying on this fight of sorts, because it really seems like it is one. Of course, we know it's West Virginia Representative Alex Mooney, so he's also taking it up as well. So let's see how these things unfold. And just let me check through the comments here. Okay, everything looks okay so far. Um, okay, so moving on. One more. Moving on. Hang on, just let me say something else now. The thing also is, I think you folks have heard me say this before. Financial freedom, that comes from when you are free from the financial system. It's just my opinion on this. And no matter what banks and governments do, your ability to store wealth, transfer wealth in an alternative form of money, real money, when they debase and tax and things like that, that's financial freedom. And that's gold and silver. So for me, financial freedom is when you can actually, uh, however you can, break away from the current financial system in a type of alternative currency, in the type of vehicle that can store your wealth. And that's why I look at gold and silver. So moving on, let's take another look, or a different, take a look at another clip from JP Cortez.
The answer is to go back to sound money, to reintroduce gold as silver as a stable peg so that people can know what to expect, so that people can accumulate assets and plan over the long term without the uncertainty that comes with just constantly moving prices, constantly changing the value of the money that's used in the society. for the same reason that we don't change the measurement of an inch or a foot based on what we determine that we might need at that time, it is a bad idea to change the value of money. The money is supposed to have a constant, stable value. And that's how people can decide how to invest and how to spend their money and how to save. But when those measurements are constantly being changed, people are harmed.
All right. And that is the answer. Sound money equals freedom and it equals liberty. People are getting harmed with the way it is right now. Take a look at a few comments here. Jean Luis Lalon, I pronounced your name wrong. I know it is. I'm just going to say the second half of this debt leads to slavery. Yes. In any language you want to say it, debt leads to slavery. Absolutely. Okay, let's see what else out there. Boyce Ulmer, I think JP Cortez, they got it from I think they do like surveys or they actually get information from the states themselves and then they go ahead and they compile this list and it's over on the Monetary Metals website. So if you want to take a look at it, it should be there. Um, okay, let's see. Yo, I've heard about this. I haven't really looked into it. Venezuelan government is removing 6 ceros from their failed currency, creating more misery to the population. I saw that. I didn't really take a look at it, but this is the story of unbacked currencies. Okay, it can and often does lead to that. Joe, how you doing from Atlanta? Thanks for coming on board. Thanks for being here. Happy Fourth to you. Okay, so that was JP Cortez, and I do hope that you folks interview or enjoyed his interview. So now I want to go ahead and take a look at our website real quick, see how gold and silver are doing this July 5th. It's July 5th here in Asia. Okay, so storage promotion, yes, 75% off transferring charges. We have that going on right now. If you are thinking of transferring in your bullion, again, shoot us an email, sales at silverbullion.com.sg, and we'll go ahead and walk you through it. Switching over to US dollar, 26.54 is where we're seeing silver at right now. We're seeing gold at 17.89. So both metals, not much of a change hanging in there. Nickel at about 18,000, just under 400. So nickel is still holding on as well. Again, why nickel? That's because it is one of the key components in electric vehicle batteries, and the demand for nickel is only growing. So that's why we also have nickel, physical nickel you can buy and store. This is not the paper form, it's the real physical form. Investor Kit is free. Just click on it and it'll pop up for you here, or you can go ahead and download it as well. Here we have some information, you know, why should you buy gold and silver? Again, tax exempt in Singapore. Most types are tax exempt here in Singapore, and why us? The things that we do differently. And I think if you folks had a chance to watch that copycat video that we just posted up, you see that you know we do things differently, but also there are companies who are trying to they do mimic what we're doing, but it's there are things you need to look for because as gold and silver start to rise and become more popular, you are going to see more and more chicanery popping up. So you need to be aware. So I do hope you have a chance to take a look at that copycat video that we just posted. Gold and silver ratio, we're at 67, having a tough time trying to get down to 66, 65, and maintain. It's having a tough time, but at least it's still under 70, so that's a good thing. Moving down again, featured products, uh, gold coins, maple leaf coins, very popular. 100-ounce bars, popular as well. Again, we have nickel here, a 2-ton bag of nickel. If you are knowing, or if you do know what's going on with electric vehicles, you probably are keeping an eye on nickel as well. 1 kilogram gold bars, and of course the 1,000-ounce LBMA bars. These are very popular. We have two in the shop, which you can come down and pick up if you are in Singapore. Just bring a trolley or something. They are heavy. And we have 285 in the vault that you can purchase and own and store in the vault with us. So that's a good deal. The thing is, though, you will have to sign up as a silver bullion user. You'll need to sign up for an account. Easy to do. Just click sign up And then you have six choices: personal, joint, trust, joint with a minor, business account, and retirement account. Again, retirement account, think of your precious metals IRA. Again, you know what's going on with the dollar, possible inflation, maybe, some guys are even calling for hyperinflation, whatever it is. If you do think fiat is in a bit of trouble, then you may want to consider switching over into a precious metals retirement account to store the value of your dollar before inflation starts to eat away at it. And again, as a sample, let's say for a personal account, basic information, um, all you would need is an ID and fill out the application. And that's pretty much it. And then you'd want to go ahead and click here, SBTV, and that'll help us out a bit. And again, you'd want to tick here as well, encrypted secure notification. What that means is when we need to contact you, you'll get an email from us, but it'll only say that you have a message from us. In the body of the email, it'll be blank, and that is because, of course, Google, Yahoo, all these guys, you want to remain private, so we do not put anything in the body of that message. It's just between you and us. So very, very good to have. Moving over to Twitter, kind of light on Twitter this week. But this one, Thomas Sowell, it's a blessing. He's a great guy. Some Americans will never appreciate America until after they have helped destroy it and have then begun to suffer the consequences. And we're seeing this today. The country is definitely changing. I know for sure it's not what it was when I was growing up, and I know for sure it's not what it was when I left in 2005. So it is changing, that's for sure. And as some of you guys mentioned, Venezuela cutting another six digits off their fiat bolivar soon. Bolivar, third time in the last 13 years. So I don't know what to say. I hope this isn't the currency. It's got to be rough there. It's really, really got to be rough there. Let's hope for the best with Venezuela. Representative Alex Mooney, happy Independence Day. We are blessed each day to live in the greatest country in the world. Alex Mooney saying happy 4th. Again, this live stream is pretty much going to be more or less on point or on topic with 4th of July. Arcadia Economics, Chris Marcus, thank you for the invite. I just couldn't turn the corner and make it there in time. They're having a bit of a party, started, I think, over an hour ago. So, Chris Marcus, I have some fun there, guys. Appreciate all that you do. Jeff Booth, history will look back on this time period and ask, why did people not see that their money being worth less each year was or not a requirement for a productive society? It was only a parlor trick designed to give some humans control over other humans. So Jeff Booth, and he's referring to money, ultimately unbacked money. Uh, Daniel Demore, Tina Bull talking about MBS. I think we are going to see some changes where the Fed, some guys are thinking that they'll start trying some type of a taper, maybe even in September. We'll see how that's going to work out, especially with the mortgage-backed securities. It's really, to me anyway, it seems like it's getting out of control. Stacy Herbert, YouTube is only good now for publishing content. Within half an hour of posting anything, we are forced to close the comments due to the avalanche of imposter accounts who reply to those comments. I wonder how that scammery impacts Google's traffic, if at all. And so again, why did I post this? It's just to let you know that it happens to us as well. Um, you know, try not to if you do see us replying to you, it's try and decipher if it's something we would really be saying or not, because we also have these imposters that do reply as us as well. Transitory container shipping rates, they've just about tripled, and we brought this up before, and this is one of the reasons why you are starting to see more and more. I'll just use the word inflation, or why things are getting a bit more. It is shipping, and there's ideas floating around that there's a lot of things that need to be shipped, which is pushing the price up. And then there are ideas floating around that shipping may be slowing down on a bit of purpose, where they are making people wait a bit longer, pushing up prices. So Anyway, whatever you think it is, shipping prices, they are definitely going up. And we talked about it before. And it is one reason why your bullion dealer, his shelves may be a bit empty because, especially here in Singapore, things do need to travel, whether by air or by sea. And, with the airlines opening back up, hopefully that will start to move precious metals a bit quicker. Peter Schiff, America was founded by rugged individuals who created government to secure their rights and leave them alone. Americans today want government to violate other people's rights, steal their stuff, and give it to them. The home of the free has become the land of the freeloader. So that's Peter Schiff, and that'll be a quick look at Twitter. And I'll be moving on over to our topic of the day. Before that, let me go ahead and take a look at a few comments here. Okay, let's see. Yo yo, a big mess. Absolutely, it's a big mess. Seems like everything's in a big mess right now. Let's see what else is out there. Um, Mitch Alex talking about Ron Paul. I guess we did have one interview with him, and grateful to have that time with him. And I think we'll show some clips from it as well. He's a very unique man. Let's see what else is out there. Okay, moving on. Okay, so Tyler me asked the question: what's the capital gains situation for gold in Singapore? And my colleague Vincent answered: no capital gains tax when you sell investment grade precious metals, and that's something to keep in mind because not every type of precious metals is investment grade. In Singapore, it needs to be at least three nines for silver. Okay, 999 for silver. With gold, it needs to be at least 9995 and above. So when you think of an item like let's say a gold eagle because it has that silver and copper added in, even though it has 1 ounce of pure gold, when you add in those metals, then it starts to break down the percentage from being fully gold to where now it's gold, partly silver, partly copper, and then ultimately breaks down to being 916 or 917. Some people want to say, which is less than that 9995. So that's the reason why gold eagles are taxed in Singapore and the reason why it may be taxed in other countries as well. We do realize it is 1 ounce of gold, but it's also copper and silver. So that's the reason why sometimes you may be wondering why is the gold eagle taxed in other countries. That's the reason why. Okay, so looking at a few more comments today. Woodsman, absolutely. So many are celebrating today, but if you take a moment to think, how much freedom and liberty do we have today? It's a good point there. So anyway, that was a look at Twitter, and I'm gonna head over to our main topic. Again, happy 4th of July. In honor of US Independence Day, I want to take a look at a few articles and quotes, some by founding fathers and some by some regular people. But these quotes by founding fathers about sound money and central banks, they're pretty significant all the way up until today. And how sound money can mean many things, including money, of course, freedom and liberty. And before we get into that, I will start by taking a look at this website, Freedom and Prosperity, the importance of sound money. So here we go. Freedom and Prosperity, the importance of sound money. Let me make this a bit larger. Okay. So this is from fff.org. Sound money is a key to a free and prosperous society. Now, that principle was clearly reflected in the monetary system that the Constitution established when it called the federal government into existence. Now, our ancestors, they did not trust government officials with power. They believed that the greatest threat to their own freedom and well being lay not with some foreign regime, but rather with our own government. And they understood that historically most people had lost their freedom and prosperity at the hands of their own governments rather than at the hands of some conquering foreign power. And that is why the American people lived for more than a decade under the Articles of Confederation, a governmental structure that provided for federal government with extremely weak and limited powers. Okay, federal government had extremely weak and limited powers. Under the articles, the federal government didn't even have the power to tax. Federal government could not even tax. And that was precisely how our American ancestors wanted it. For them, a weak federal government meant a federal government that was incapable of destroying their freedom and economic well-being. Let's move on to another article here. This is from the Mises Institute. Uh, okay, all kind of things here going on. Freedom and sound money. Again, now this is back in 2005, but it's still timeless. It's impossible to grasp the meaning of the idea of sound money if one does not realize that it was devised as an instrument for the protection of civil liberties. Okay, we get that. Sound money was devised as an instrument for the protection of civil liberties against despotic inroads on the part of government or on the part of governments. Now, ideologically, it belongs in the same class with political constitutions and bills of right. So wrote Ludwig von Mises in The Theory of Money and Credit back in 1912. He goes on to say the sound money principle has two aspects. It is affirmative in approving the market's choice of a commonly used medium of exchange, and it is negative in obstructing the government's, or it is a negative in obstructing the government's propensity to meddle with the currency system. Against this backdrop, modern days monetary systems appears to have been drifting farther and farther away from the sound money principle in the last decades. In all countries, the so-called, especially the free world, money represents nowadays a government-controlled, irredeemable paper or fiat money standard. The widely held view is that this money system would be compatible with the ideal of a free society and conducive to sustainable output and employment growth. Now, to be sure, there are voices calling for caution, and we know many of them. They are calling for caution, taking a historical viewpoint. Milton Friedman stated, "The world is now engaged in a great experiment." Okay, Milton Friedman, great experiment to see whether it can fashion a different anchor, one that depends on government restraint rather than on the cost of acquiring a physical commodity. Irving Fisher, evaluating past experiences, wrote, irredeemable paper money has almost invariably proved a curse to the country employing it. And we're seeing it. We're seeing these things unfold. We're watching it all unravel. So take a look at a few more comments here. Okay, so there was another man, Friedrich Hayek. He had something to say. This was years and years ago. It was mostly about socialism, but the point being, with that you have less and less freedom, less and less liberty. So his interview was pretty interesting, and I'm going to play that for you. This is Hayek.
Could I just interrupt at that point? You say socialism is impossible in a technical sense. Now, what exactly do you mean by that?
It proposes a solution which is not the solution. You cannot, well, it takes a long time, but it's my central problem. Socialism assumes that all the available knowledge can be used by a single central authority. It overlooks that the modern society, which I now prefer to call the extended order, which exceeds the perception of any individual mind, is based on the utilization of widely dispersed knowledge. And once you are aware that we can achieve that great utilization of available resources only because we utilize the knowledge of millions of men, it becomes clear that the assumption of socialism that a central authority can command all this knowledge is just not correct.
So what you're doing is you're turning on its head the common point one often hears from the left, that because the problems of modern society are so difficult, that they require planning. You're saying because they're so complex, they make planning impossible.
Well, I think the nicest form to put it is to say that socialism protesting against the production for profit and not for use, objects to what makes the extended society possible. Production for use is only possible in a society where we know all the facts. But to achieve the situation where we are all working for people whom we do not know and are being supported by the work of people we do not know is made possible because we produce for profit. Profit is a signal which tells us what we must do in order to serve people whom we do not know.
Yes. Now, you and von Mises put forward this criticism in the 20s. What reaction did you get from the socialists of the day? What reply did they make to that fundamental criticism?
They were unwilling to admit the factual argument. They preferred to withdraw on the fact. This is a difference of values on which science cannot decide. Once you accept the socialist values that we must be guided by a conception of just distribution, all the factual arguments are irrelevant. Well, of course, the factual arguments prove that the just distribution is impossible unless the distributor knows all the facts. So my answer is, if the factual assumptions of socialism were correct, it would be a moral duty to aim at the just distribution. But you have to recognize you cannot do it. In fact, you can produce enough to maintain the present population of the world only because of a spontaneous process or mechanism which enables you to make use of infinitely more information than any central authority possesses.
All right. Now, that was pretty interesting. In Hayek's view, if I understood correctly, was how information is critical to control people, or expanding on what he's saying. Information is critical to control people, especially when it comes to something like socialism. He has a point because when you look at information today, it is being collected and consolidated, especially when it comes to social media, collecting information that we are all freely giving them. And then, of course, we have mainstream media disseminating information. So things are really consolidating as to who gets the information, how they use the information, and what information they want you to have or want you to know. And make no mistake, it is getting dangerous out there. It is getting dangerous. So I want to take a look at a few things the founding fathers and presidents had to say. Quotes on money, freedom, and liberty. George Washington, paper money has had the effect in your state that it will ever have, to ruin commerce, oppress the honest, and open the door to every species of fraud and injustice. That coming from George Washington. Oppress the honest, or ruin commerce, oppress the honest, and open the door to every species of fraud and injustice. And this was known back then, 1787. Thomas Jefferson, I wish it were possible to obtain a single amendment to our Constitution. I would be willing to depend on that alone for the reduction of the administration of our government to the genuine principles of its Constitution. I mean, an additional article taking from the federal government the power of borrowing. Okay, so another amendment he's looking at, or an additional article taking from the federal government the power of borrowing. Okay. Another quote from Jefferson: the bank paper must be suppressed and the circulating medium must be restored to the nation to whom it belongs. Okay, bank paper. He's talking about bank paper, and then he's talking about the medium or money must be restored to the nation to whom it belongs. Not a fan of central banks. This is coming from John Adams. All the perplexities, confusion, and distress in America arise not from defects in their constitution or confederation, not from want of honor or virtue, so much as from the downright ignorance of the nature of coin, credit, and circulation. Okay, it comes from the ignorance of the nature of coin, credit, and circulation. One more quote quote from Adams, there are two ways to conquer and enslave a country. One is by the sword, and the other is by debt. Some pretty strong words right there from the founding fathers. Just want to take a look at a few of the comments here. All right, so I guess you guys are talking about some current events. All right, so people are up to speed. Okay, so human freedom and gold. There was an article I came across. So let me make this a little bit larger here again. This is by the Honorable Howard Buffett, U.S. Congressman from Nebraska, back in 1948. I'll just read the first paragraph here, or the first four paragraphs. Is there a connection between human freedom and the gold redeemable money? At first glance, it would seem that money belongs to the world of economics and human freedom to the political sphere. But when you recall that one of the first moves by Lenin, Mussolini, and Hitler was to outlaw individual ownership of gold, you begin to sense that there may be some connection between money redeemable in gold and the rare prize known as human liberty. Also, when you find that Lenin declared and demonstrated that a sure way to overturn the existing social order and bring about communism was by the printing press and creating paper money, then again, you are impressed with the possibility of a relationship between a gold backed money and human freedom. In that case, then certainly you and I, as Americans, should know the connection. We must find it even if money is a difficult and tricky subject. I suppose that if most people were asked for their views on money, the almost universal answer would be that they didn't have enough of it. And last paragraph here. In a free country, the monetary unit rests upon a fixed foundation of gold or gold and silver, independent of the ruling politicians. Our dollar was that kind of money before 1933. Under that system, paper currency is redeemable for a certain weight of gold at the free option and choice of the holder of paper money. So now, as you probably already know, gold and silver did indeed back the U.S. dollar, the U.S. money supply. Although for an expanding country, there were also founding fathers who thought maybe money backed by gold would be too restrictive, while others thought it was imperative to have sound money. And the two most notable to debate this were Jefferson and Hamilton. And I'll go ahead and play a clip on this.
One of the core problems that Hamilton realized, having lived through the Revolutionary War with George Washington on the battlefield, was the inability of the Continental Congress to raise the requisite amount of funds to help feed and fund the army in battle. And he never wanted to go back to that. And so Washington as well realized that. And so they wanted a central government that would at least be able to have taxing power and the power to do those very things.
Constitutional Convention debated whether or not there should be a national bank, a bank run by the government, and they rejected the idea. But Hamilton, as Treasury Secretary under President George Washington, wanted to revive the idea, and his nemesis Jefferson thought that was a horrible idea because he thought it would create too much centralized governmental power.
Alexander Hamilton becomes Secretary of the Treasury on September 11, 1789, with a strong vision of where the nation should go. And he produced several monumental state papers, of which the bank report is just one of four.
He basically made the case that it would be convenient to have a national bank as a depository of tax revenues, eliminate the middleman of a private bank in doing that, and he wanted the government to be able to make selective loans.
He spends a lot of time explaining how the great European powers all have access to a quasi-national or state bank for operations that enhance the government. He points out many advantages that banks have for governments and also for regulating trade and commerce for private individuals. And he spends a lot of time also getting ready because he anticipates that there's going to be a lot of blowback and a lot of anti-bank forces. And so he spends a lot of time in the bank report trying to address these.
The Jeffersonians warned that it could be corrupting of politics because there would be the incentive of the government to use this bank as a way of subsidizing politically favored businesses and other special interest groups. And his followers warned that a bank that could print paper money was a danger, and it could create not only inflation, but also create what we today call boom and bust cycles in the economy. It makes us think we can get something for nothing, but of course the chickens always come home to roost in the form of price inflation, economic destabilization, recessions, depressions, etc.
Hamilton knew that a national bank would be the heartbeat of a free enterprise capitalist system. It would be where savers of capital and users of capital would come together. It would be of primary importance to the government. It would be a ready source of loans. It would be a place where they could deposit their money. And imperatively, what he really cared about was the credit of the United States. The bank bill, it's going to pass fairly quickly in the Senate, but it's going to meet resistance in the House of Representatives, but it will eventually be passed there by a vote of 39 to 20 and then submitted to President George Washington, who's going to have to decide whether or not to sign this bill to create a national bank. He turns to two cabinet members, Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson and Attorney General Edmund Randolph, to offer opinions, and they both say that the bank is unconstitutional.
Jefferson made the obvious case that it was not a part of the delegated powers in the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8, and therefore it's blatantly unconstitutional.
If Jefferson and Randolph argued that it was unconstitutional because it was not explicitly written or allowed by the U.S. Constitution, Hamilton turned that argument on its head. This is Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, which has enumerated many powers to the government: the power to raise an army and a navy, the power to declare war. But at the end is something known as the sweeping clause, and that is that the government can create whatever is necessary and proper to achieve its ends.
He said because of the necessary and proper clause, there is an implied power to have a national bank. And once you get on that road, then the Constitution is no longer a limit on any governmental power.
Hamilton, with his wife assisting, stays up all night to copy out his opinion on the constitutionality of a bank and is submitted the next morning to George Washington, who then ponders it and decides to enact this legislation.
So at the heart of it is really the great debate over centralized governmental power versus decentralized power.
Often the left looks at Hamilton and say he's too pro-business. And the right will look at Hamilton and be against him because they say he's too big government. If any of the founding fathers came back and stood at the corner of Wall and Broad Street in New York and looked at the economic miracle that America has turned into, it would be Alexander Hamilton who would understand it better than all of them.
Okay. Yeah, quite a few opinions, comments out there. Great job. Appreciate that. It's always good to have different views. Please, please, please remember these two names now, Hamilton and Jefferson. I'm going to tell you something about these two men at the end of this live stream. And seriously, you are not going to believe this. Okay, Hamilton and Jefferson. You're not going to believe it. Maybe if you know history, you already know, but this was news for me. So hopefully you'll stick around to the end. So a central bank came about, and as you know, the U.S. has had more than one central bank. Without going into too much detail, we know that the current U.S. central bank is called the Federal Reserve. It is a private bank. Make no mistake, it is a private bank. It is a corporation, and ever since the latest inception of a U.S. central bank called the Federal Reserve back in 1913, their dollar has been losing purchasing power ever since. I think since 1913, the U.S. dollar has only about 3% of its purchasing power since then. So it's been losing purchasing power. And there are calls to end the Fed. There are bills before Congress to implement sound money, yet these often and always fall upon deaf ears of our leaders and people you and I voted for. But why? Why won't they give us a sound dollar? Previous guest, Ron Paul, he'll tell you why. Nice to have you here, Dr. Paul. And again, we appreciate your lifetime of service and what you have done. Dr. Paul, you've been an advocate for sound money. Can you define what sound money is? And in your experiences, why is it that bills that come before Congress calling for sound money just never seem to get any support?
It's because there's a lot of people who benefit from having unsound money. And so it's the motivation to keep that system going, because that's how the special interests depend on it and benefit from it. And it's broad, it's huge on the number of people. So as long as they can keep that funny money system going, they don't have to earn their money or earn their wealth. It's provided by government of appropriations, that you can run up debt, and deficits don't matter. And then they monetize it. And then you have a Federal Reserve that just, prints the money as they need it. And they have to cheat and steal because they're devaluing the money, and they have to debase the currency. And that is an advantage to everybody who has their hands out. The welfare state, I talk about both all the time, because if anybody complains about, we have too much welfare, or we're fighting too many wars, you got to get rid of the Fed, because that's how it's financed. It's not financed through taxation, direct taxation. It's through the tax of inflation. And it's worse than it's ever been. And I've followed this very, very closely for a long time, especially since the Bretton Woods broke down in 1971. But there's been nothing like this, even in history, I don't believe, where they take interest rates down to zero, spend endlessly. Nobody can even count the number of trillions of dollars that have been produced in last year, both by appropriations as well as from the Federal Reserve. So it's a system that really bows to a lot of people get the benefit. Not only is it the welfareist, but there's the corporate welfareist, and there's the banking system benefits, and there's also this international organization, and it's a worldwide program of trying to maintain a dollar standard, because it's a tremendous benefit to us, but the people who take it, it's a benefit to them too, because we sort of take care of them one way or the other, and that's how the process continues. But the way I see it, it's all going to come to end, because it's not a sound system. It's not sound money. So the lack of a sound system and a sound economic and political system is a consequence, I think, very much in the ability of the Federal Reserve and the people to accept a system of unsound money, and not even concerned about defining what sound money is all about.
Right. So Dr. Ron Paul, that interview, it's really something special. And it's really, I hope you I hope you folks had a chance to watch this. Really something pretty special. Veteran Prepper, I think they'll wait until things are in bad shape to roll out central bank digital systems, I guess, to create a narrative. We have the solution, talking about central bank digital currencies. Um, as Dr. Paul said, this isn't going to end well, and that may, who knows, maybe it is the problem that they're waiting for with their solution. So who knows how that's going to be? But I think we can all agree there is going to be a new monetary system that is coming. Central banks have already told us, they are going to roll out central bank digital currencies. So getting back to Ron Paul, a lot said from a man who knows a lot. So what do we make of this? Do politicians have our best interests at heart, or theirs? I think I know most of you will say. And there just is no interest in DC except for a few, such as Representative Alex Mooney from West Virginia, who year after year after year will bring up the idea, a bill for sound money that just never gets anywhere. And perhaps it never gets anywhere because year after year, the same people get voted back in year after year. Some people have been there 35, 40, over 40 years. We've put them back in office over and over and over again. Today we see Janet Yellen as the new Treasury Secretary, and Yellen is going to try to light a fire to get that velocity of money going. What do you think about the money printing going on and the stimulus going on?
Well, I look at it and say, I don't know, thinking that this is going to continue because it's going to end badly, and is so excessive. And the stimulus is it all comes from the idea that creating money creates wealth. If the Fed's down or Congress is down there and they send everybody $1,400, oh no, that's not enough. Somebody wants it. Well, maybe it ought to be just $900. Oh no, we went $3,000, and so it goes on and on. What are we going to do with the student loans? Just reverse it, wipe it off the books, and they do this, and they never really think about what the significance is. But it's absolutely totally out of control. The founders knew that this was a dangerous thing to happen. That's why they wrote in the Constitution after their experience with the continental money is that our government was supposed to only be able to mint gold and silver as money and define the unit of account. But that didn't last too long, and now it's just a matter of serving the special interest. But everybody thinks they're getting a benefit, and on the short run, many do. But on the long run, a lot of people suffer. In some countries, everybody suffers except the handful of politicians who can, escape the system.
Okay. Escape the system. And the word Dr. Paul chose, escape, that word escape in a roundabout way, it means freedom. Escape does mean freedom in a roundabout way. So let's take a look at a few more quotes and events from those who sat in Congress and expressed the dangers of the Federal Reserve or a central bank. Charles Lindbergh, U.S. House Congressman, regarded the Federal Reserve and declared, this act establishes the most gigantic trust on earth. And when the president signs this bill, the invisible government by the monetary power will be legalized. The people may not know it immediately, but the day of reckoning is only a few years removed. The worst legislative crime of the ages is perpetrated by this banking bill. The worst okay, I think I put that twice there. Moving on, Lewis Thomas McFadden. He later on became vociferous foe of the Federal Reserve, which he claimed was created and operated by a Jewish banking interest. Again, this is what they're saying, a Jewish banking interest who conspired to economically control the United States. In a speech in the House of Representatives in December of 31, McFadden accused Paul Warburg, one of the leading forces behind the Federal Reserve Act, of having engineered the Great Depression. On June 10th of 32, McFadden made a 25-minute speech before the House in which he accused the Federal Reserve of deliberately causing the Great Depression. McFadden also claimed that Wall Street bankers funded the Bolshevik Revolution through the Federal Reserve banks and the European central banks with which it cooperated. Also, he went on to say, after the expulsion from Washington, D.C., of the veteran petitioners of the Bonus Army, which he called the greatest crime in modern history, McFadden moved to impeach President Herbert Hoover in 32, and he also introduced a resolution bringing conspiracy charges against the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. The impeachment resolution was defeated by a vote of 361 to 8. And then, of course, we have U.S. Congressman Dr. Ron Paul. Now, he was a medical resident in the 60s. He was influenced by Friedrich Hayek's The Road to Serfdom. We just watched a video clip on Hayek, which caused him to read other publications by Ludwig von Mises and Ayn Rand. He came to know economist Hans Sennholz and Murray Rothbard as well, and credits his interest in the study of economics to them. And when Nixon closed the gold window by ending the American participation in the Bretton Woods system, thus ending the dollar's loose association with gold in August of 71, Paul decided to enter politics and become a Republican candidate for U.S. Congress. Self-described constitutionalist, Dr. Paul is a critic of the federal government's fiscal policies, especially the existence of the Federal Reserve and the tax policy, as well as the military industrial complex, the war on drugs, and the war on terror. He has also been a vocal critic of mass surveillance policies such as the USA Patriot Act and the NSA surveillance programs. So, some strong words from congressmen there. Words that they would call you a conspiracy theorist if you were to say any of these things today, but they were there. They were there when these things happened. They were witnesses to it. Okay, so they were not removed from the situation. We are generation or maybe two generations removed, but they were there. So if this is what they were saying at that time, they were witnesses to what was happening. So some pretty strong quotes and opinions there. Okay, moving on. Let's see. Let's take a look at some of these comments here. Okay, let me see what we got out there. Um, hang on. Reading some of your comments here. Um, okay. Yeah, some people they do believe this. I mean, they're just trying to take a middle ground here. Ron Paul would have made a great president. Too bad he wasn't. Coming up for the sheep. Okay, the thing with that one, I think it was unfortunate. Whether you liked Ron Paul or not, it was unfortunate the way, basically. I mean, I'll just say it: the media removed your choice. They removed your choice. He wasn't allowed into the debates. So it this is far reaching. It goes way 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 back. But anyway, so let's take a look at some quotes about central banks. Okay, so let me make this a bit larger again for you. Okay, central banks, Carl Menger. Money is not an invention of the state. It's not a product of a legislative act. Even the sanction of political authority is not necessary for its existence. Certain commodities came to be money quite naturally as the result of economic relationships that were independent of the power of the state. Quote from Jay Leno. I was reading in the paper today that Congress wants to replace the dollar bill with a coin. They've already done it. It's called a nickel, referring to the dollar's purchasing power. Okay, inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. Banking was conceived in iniquity and was born in sin. The bankers own the earth, take it away from them, but leave them the power to create deposits, and with a flick of a pen, they will create enough deposits and buy it back again. However, take it away from them, and all the great fortunes like mine will disappear, and they ought to disappear, for this would be a happier and better world to live in. But if you wish to remain the slaves of the bankers and pay the cost of your own slavery, let them continue to create deposits. Hayek. There is no answer in the available literature to the question why a government monopoly of the provision of money is universally regarded as indispensable. It has the defects of all monopolies. Economist Mohammed El Irian, having been forced into being the only game in town, they, meaning central banks, now find their destiny is no longer entirely or even mostly theirs to control. The legacy of their exceptional period of hyper policy experimentation is now over, now in the hands of governments and their political bosses. So, once upon a time, these central banks were supposed to be independent from governments. Today, they seem to be in lockstep. Andrew Jackson, if Congress has the right under the Constitution to issue paper money, it was given them to be used by themselves, not to be delegated to individuals or corporations. Carter Glass, with a gun, a man can rob a bank. With a bank, a man a man can rob the world. Last one here from McFadden, who we just took a look at. We have in this country one of the most corrupt institutions in the world, or the world has ever known. I refer to the Federal Reserve Board. This evil institution has impoverished the people of the United States and has practically bankrupt our own government. It has done this through the corrupt practices of the moneyed vultures who control it. All right. So some pretty strong words there. Just want to stay in touch with you guys and take a look at the comments here. If Paul was president, we would have been a lot better off today. It would have been interesting. I mean, how would he have gotten rid of the Fed? How would he have brought back in some type of a gold backed dollar? Um, Things would have definitely been shaken up for sure. I mean, what would have happened to all the debt, the dollar denominated debt? I mean, I think we would have had to have seen gold surely shoot up to account for all of the money printing that had happened at that time. Now imagine if it has to do that during this time. So I tell you, it'll be an interesting, very very interesting thing. Uh, Mr. Nguyen, that's true. If you were president, military probably would shrink. Let's see what else is out there. Um, let's see. True to your roots, absolutely. Everything went weird after 2008, and the thing is, if you ever did look at the federal, the reserve balance sheet after 2008, it's just gone up. It just can't come back down. And we've said this before. Once they put that punch bowl in front of Wall Street, they weren't ever able to take it away. And then, with what happened during the last year, they put that punch bowl in front of Main Street. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't have helped people. People needed some type of relief. But the situation with that is perhaps the unintended or intended consequences. Once you put that punch bowl in front of Main Street, you are going to have a tough time taking it away. So if you have that punch bowl in front of Wall Street, in front of Main Street, you are just simply not really going to be able to take it away unless some type of an event or crisis happens where things have to roll over into a solution that they are probably already working on or already have. So, want to take a look at, if you don't mind, 10 quotes from Thomas Jefferson. He was one guy who really had a lot to say about central banks. So let's take a look at 10 quotes from Jefferson. We make this a bit larger again. Okay. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Excuse me, the issuing power should be taken from banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. I sincerely believe that banking establishments are more dangerous than standing armies, and that the principle of spending money to be paid by posterity under the name of funding is but swindling futurity on a large scale. A lot of people believe this to this day. Everything predicted by the enemies of banks in the beginning is now coming to pass. We are we are to be ruined now by the deluge of bank paper. It's cruel that such revolutions in private fortunes should be at the mercy of avaricious adventurers who, instead of employing their capital, if any they have, in manufactures, commerce, and other useful pursuits, make it an instrument to burden all the interchanges of property with their swindling profits, profits which are the price of no useful industry to theirs. The art and mystery of banks is established on the principle that private debts are a public blessing, that the evidences of those private debts called banknotes become active capital and an element the whole commerce, manufacturers, and agriculture of the U.S. Here are a set of people, for instance, who have bestowed on us the great blessing of running in our debt about 200 millions of dollars without our knowing who they are, where they are, or what property they have to pay this debt when called on. Okay, so there are a few more opinions, but I think we more or less get the gist of what Thomas Jefferson is saying here. Um, just maybe read a couple more here. A spirit of gambling in our public paper has seized on too many of our citizens, and we fear it will check our commerce, arts, manufacturers, and agriculture unless stopped. Our public credit is good, but the abundance of paper has produced the spirit of gambling in the funds which has laid up our ships at the wharves as to slow instruments of profits, and has even disarmed the hand of the tailor and his needle and thimble. They say the evil will cure itself. I wish it may, but I have rarely seen a gamester cured, even by the disaster of his vocation. So those are a few quotes from Thomas Jefferson, one of the strongest advocates against free banks and for sound money. Let's take a look at a few more quotes. Um, let's see, Mr. Nguyen. That's a great question. What would happen if we did end the Fed? What do you guys think? What would happen if we end the Fed? Um, I suppose the money printing would be taken over by the treasury or the government, or one would hope. Maybe, maybe not. One would hope, but that's a great question. What do you think would happen? What do you think would happen if we end the Fed? So I want to move on here. Let me see. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. We cannot leave without saying what, of course, what the founding fathers, our presidents, had to say about sound money, freedom, liberty, without something this man had to say. For it was he who allowed the creation of the Federal Reserve. And years before he died, this is what he had to say. And this was President Woodrow Wilson. I am a most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men. Again, Woodrow Wilson was the man who signed the Federal Reserve Act into law. And now this is what he's saying. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and the rest of a small group of dominant men. Again, this was said by Wilson, President Woodrow Wilson, a few years before his death, in reference to the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, which was signed into law. And from what I understand, there is a cancel culture moving now against President Woodrow Wilson. Well, if that is so and he is canceled, then I need to show you this tweet by someone we all know, that being Peter Schiff. Now, he says, since Princeton University is removing Woodrow Wilson's name from its buildings due to his racist thinking and policies, I think we should also repeal the federal income tax and the Federal Reserve, as both acts were signed into law by Wilson. Letting either law stand is racist, according to Peter Schiff. Yes, let me take a look at a few comments here. Okay, we're into deep. Let's see. Okay, Mr. Argudo, we can end the Fed and get rid of that paper gold to people's money backed by gold, 40% backing. It's what it was. That is what it was once upon a time. No, I told you to remember Jefferson and Hamilton, right? I know it's getting late. I'll try and pick up the speed here. Jefferson and Hamilton, these two guys, they're great debates between central bank and no central bank. Outside of that, this is what happened with these two guys.
Jefferson was somebody who had a lot of money and he enjoyed spending it. He owned a lot of land and he owned a lot of slaves. When Jefferson traveled, occasionally he didn't have all the money he needed, and his servants, who were slaves of course, would accompany him, and Jefferson could ask them to loan the money. As a former president, he was kind of an object of public curiosity. And so the stream of visitors through the house was constant, and they had to be entertained, and they all wanted to, sit down to a meal. And by 1826, he was completely bankrupt. At that point, he was drinking North Carolina wine instead of the French stuff. Alexander Hamilton also died in financial trouble. If Hamilton hadn't died in 1804, killed by Aaron Burr, and had gone on to have the rest of a very successful legal career, he would not have left the substantial debts. He had an enormous family, all these children, and so there were a lot of people to take care of, and he hadn't saved a penny while he was Secretary of the Treasury. He hadn't saved a penny while he was Secretary of the Treasury, and his law practice would definitely have paid big dividends over the years to come, but he died too soon. Franklin, of course, is famous for saying things like a penny saved is a penny earned, all those little pithy things about being a careful calculating bourgeois. And Franklin was a careful calculating bourgeois. Franklin started out in life, of course, as a printer, and he was very successful doing that, so successful that he retired from business in his 40s, and thereafter was a kind of investor, coupon clipper. And he invested in real estate in Philadelphia and so on, and he accumulated a lot of money.
Whoa, okay. Sorry if that was a bit loud there, but I mean, Hamilton and Jefferson, one advocating for a central bank, the other for sound money of sorts, and both were both were bankrupt towards the end. I'm not making fun of these two guys. Sorry, I'm kind of laughing here a bit, but I tell you, you just never know which way history is going to turn. This point in time is going to turn or lead into something else as well. So again, not making fun of these two guys, just pointing out that these two men, they were saddled up for whatever came before them. They just didn't silver up, which is why you and I have to saddle up and silver up. And if you are moved to want to do something, because as we all know, freedom is not free. Here's two last clips, one from Dr. Paul and one from J.P. Cortez. First with Dr. Ron Paul. We saw President Nixon sever the redeemability of dollars to gold, albeit temporarily. Dr. Paul, when you heard this, when you saw this, what were your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, because I got involved in studying Austrionomics before that. Because there were a lot writing about it, and they were predicting throughout the 60s that the Bretton Woods would break down, and then the investors came out, and that's what they were writing about. And of course, they did talk about silver, but silver sort of lagged the debate, on gold. So they said it wouldn't last, and Bretton Woods break down, and people were starting to buy gold stocks. We weren't allowed to buy gold. But, here in this great free country that was doing pretty well, we couldn't own gold between 1933 and 1975. And finally, that was reversed after it dawned on them that the people are sort of waking up to this. But I remember 1971, August 15th, very, very well. It was a Sunday night, and I heard Nixon came on. I listened to that speech, and it really got my attention. And I really date my decision to speak out about it. I said, this is insane what they're doing. I'm just going to speak out. And that's when I started dabbling in politics. And the last thought of my mind was I'd go to Congress, because I couldn't imagine anybody being interested. So I had the surprises that people did pay some attention. And that was the issue I more or less used being in Congress. And it's still something I talk about. So it was something that requires education. The founders understood the issue of inflation and paper money and counterfeit money and fiat money. And when crisis hit, more people learn about it. That's why, although I don't spend a lot of time in the investment part of it, I pay a lot of attention to it. But the people who invest, they're doing two things. One, they're learning, why am I investing in this? And why is it helpful? How can we preserve our wealth by being involved in investments in metals? And I think people have to learn something about that. Inadvertently, they have to learn, why are they doing this? And so I was fascinated with that. But then it was in 1974 that I first ran for Congress, and that was when I ran into some surprises. My wife said it was foolish. What are you doing that for? And I said, I'm just going to talk. Don't worry about it. And she said, no, it's dangerous. I said, why is me talking about gold standard? She says, that's not it. She says, you're going to go out there and talk about this stuff, and you're going to tell them the truth, and they're going to believe you, and they're going to end up electing you. And I said, no way, you're not going to elect me. But fortunately, I found some people out there, if they listen to the truth, and I still find that to be the case. I still felt great about reaching a lot of young people during the presidential campaigns and campuses that were considered ultra liberal. We could get a bunch of young people coming out and want to hear about the Federal Reserve, but they also wanted to hear about liberty. That was the message I was delivering.
Okay, so there is hope, and here's JP Cortez.
Most of our efforts are on the state level. Again, the monetary dysfunction, all of the trouble that is wrought on people monetarily, largely stems from the federal level. It's the Federal Reserve, it's the Treasury, it's these large federal government agencies. Many times are filled with unelected bureaucrats, just a cabal of central bankers that no one voted for, that are determining how money works, operates, the level and rate at which it's printed. And so in many cases, there's a lot of things that states can't do. And that's why we're choosing a state policy approach, because the things that states can do are so important to mitigate some of these damages, and they're much more effective and efficient. On the federal level, it's very difficult to enact change. Federal politics, federal legislation moves extremely slowly. And so if we want to enact change, we work on the state level. Generally, it's participation. In a lot of cases, it is education. Reading, there have been a lot of Austrian economists, free market economists that have done a lot of great work on this issue. Obviously, Ron Paul was a champion on this issue as far as United States politician. Milton Friedman, Ludwig von Mises, Murray Rothbard, F.A. Hayek. These were all American economists, or I guess some of them were American economists, some international economists that explain the importance of sound money. For example, Ludwig von Mises has a great quote where he argues that sound money, you can't understand sound money until you understand that it was created as a protection against the despotic inroads of big government, and that sound money as a question of protections should be included in the Bill of Rights, because it should be protected that much, that without sound money, you have countries today, because of endless monetary printing, they can fight wars, endless wars for decades on decades overseas, and they can provide or produce these massive welfare warfare states. And you have an incredible amount of waste, just poor uses of money when there are citizens that don't have anything and governments spend lavishly. That is a product of moving away from sound money. And so the education piece is incredibly important. And it's not hard to see how it applies to your real life. Walk into a grocery store, look at the price of food at your grocery store and how that has increased over the last 6 months, over the last year, over the last 10 years. You can go to a fast food restaurant. Dollar menus don't exist anymore. That's not a thing anymore. Prices on everything are going up. And so it takes a little bit of curiosity to look at these and wonder, what is this phenomenon? Why is this happening? And economists, government economists will tell you that inflation is important. But when you start to question some of those premises, you start to realize, wait, it doesn't have to be this way. People at the bottom don't continually have to be pinched out. They don't continually have to lose the purchasing power of their money for a prosperous economy to exist. That can't be true. And so the education is huge. Being able to see it, how it affects people in the world, is huge. Supporting legislation is important. Calling your legislator, calling your congressman, writing emails, speaking at legislative hearings, all of that participation shows legislators the importance of these issues. It shows them that the people in their state, the people in their community, have a vested interest in the restoration of sound money. The Sound Money Defense League and Money Metals Exchange are constantly, providing updates on these issues, providing details on upcoming hearings, and we encourage people to reach out to their legislators to explain why this is important. And that's how many people can help. And many people do help that way. I encourage others to do the same as well.
Okay, and so that'll end the topic of the day. Let me just check something here. Okay, yeah, so that'll end our main topic of the day, which was pretty much what founding fathers had to say about money and central banks and where we are today, and what even past congressmen and current congressmen have to say about it. So we'll move over to our commentary section real quick here. As we've been talking about how sound money provides freedom, Hayek with an outstanding thought that none of us should soon forget. And we must also have a sound mind to have freedom as well. Sound money, sound mind. Central banks control the money they're giving us, and they prefer that only one type of money to be used. And the last thing we can afford to do is to then let a government or media or social media control, give us only one way to think where we must all think the same. And when these two combine, freedom is gone and the door is absolutely closing on freedom. Now, how people throughout the world define freedom may be different. I've come to learn this. I thought freedom only had one definition, but there are different definitions of freedom across the world. However, when freedom is gone, I think the world will define freedom the same way. I think it's going to be defined as something that you are going to have to fight for, never to be compromised again if humanity is to ever have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Every man, woman, and child has that birthright. You do too. Before we go, one last thing to look at. There is this coin by the Liberty Mint, came out quite a few years back. Um, on the right, it says, "No state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender to or a tender for payments and debt." And in that exists a loophole. See, it only mentions it only mentions states. Okay. It doesn't mention what the federal government can do. So as the states, we can mint gold and silver as a payment of debt, or the only thing that states can use. It doesn't say anything about the federal government. And that's unfortunate because it seems that this is the loophole that they are using. If this doesn't sit well with you, do as JP Cortez says and hound your legislators. Talk to them, write to them. Or do as Ron Paul did, take both office and action. That'll end our commentary section there. I mean, I hope this was good for you guys. It was a good fourth, and I don't know if you can see it, but this is that coin. Oops, there you go. And turn it around here. So I was fortunate to get one of these, and in fact, it was Vincent, my my colleague Vincent, who actually sold this coin to me a few years back. Vincent, I don't know if you remember that, but you were the guy who sold me that coin, and I did check it; it's real. So thanks, thanks for that, Vincent. But again, I do hope you folks have a happy Fourth. Yes, this live stream was more geared towards U.S., but I think we can all appreciate freedom, no matter what level that we see freedom to be. Uh, yeah, Tyler, escape the system. That's really what it's about, and it boils down to options. We have to have options, and that's what we do at Silver Bullion. We try to provide options, and if you folks need more guidance on it or clearance or more thought about it, just go ahead and email us at sales@silverbullion.com.sg. So I appreciate you all being here. I know you're probably tired from being out in the sun too long with your sunburn and too many hot dogs you've ate and too much beer in the belly right now. And wish I could have been with you all, but hope you all had fun there. So again, appreciate it. And yeah, sumo up. Sumo up. We'll have to play that clip some other time. But again, we're all in this boat together. We kind of have a good idea of what's going on. And we all need to be that blessing and not the burden. A lot of people are going to need help. So let's do what we can to help ourselves, help our family and friends, and just stay alert as to what's going on. And as I always say, saddle up for what's coming ahead and silver up as well. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.